Hello, OverPower friends, and welcome back to the OverPower Mountain Podcast with your host, Marcel, the greatest OverPower player of all time. First off, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there for listening, for commenting, for liking, for subscribing. I've got a lot of really nice messages, a lot of really nice text, emails, and phone calls in regards to the podcast. So I'm glad you're really enjoying. I'm enjoying giving it to you in whatever way I can through whatever wisdom I've gained. I'm very happy to pass it along through the medium of this podcast. So thank you for joining me on the OverPower Mountain podcast. I promise this one should be a good one as well. So today we're going to jump right into it with another advanced OverPower podcast. This one we're going to focus on competitive characters. Now, that's a very broad statement. So I think with the first part of competitive characters for this episode, we're going to focus specifically on one very, very, very specific genre. And that's probably what I would say you will see one of this type of genre on every deck in a tournament setting, if not 97% of them. And what I'm referencing, without making you guess any further, is Negators. So in OverPower, the Negate, in my mind, is truly just one of the best cards you can have. The card code is AO. The text reads, negates the effect of any one special card played by opponent. And what this does is, no matter what special your opponent plays, you can now there's a few that you can't, but majority, especially at the beginning of OverPower and for a long time, the Negate just stopped it instantly. And not only did it stop it, it stopped any secondary effects, anything to that effect. And not only did the Negate, in early OverPower, a lot of the times there was a lot of attacks, as in larger attacks and things you had to deal with in the specials world, but there was also what a lot of people call pins. So like target opponent may not attack, and like even in the third set, the DZ was created, and target character may not attack or be attacked for remainder of battle. And even earlier on, obviously, with I believe the AX was also out there as well in Power Surge. So that was, X character and target character may not attack for remainder of battle. So you could understand that, these types of cards needed a way to sort of be stopped. And yeah, Pure Void did it, but there wasn't a lot of early full team defense in OverPower. The Negate truly was the grandpappy of the team defense when OverPower started, and to this day, even is still the grandpappy of OverPower. The Negate truly is the best card in OverPower. That's why, as you've heard me in many podcasts previous to this one, and I'll say it again in this one, I truly believe to compete on a high level where you are looking for a high percentage win rate, whether it be for ratings or for a good run at a tournament, to not play with a Negator is to, truly play against the grain. And it does make it a lot tougher on you, especially when you're in a situation where you're playing against an opponent who just has, let's just say upwards of 4 to 6 cards in their deck that need to be negated, or else they will truly win the game. It puts a little wrinkle in the plan. It's always just nice to be able to sort of have that moment where your opponent's putting out their best laid plans. They literally have everything they think they got, and they got you, and here's the trump card, and then all of a sudden you're just like, nah, I had this in my hand the whole time, and I was just playing like I didn't have it. And if I could tell you the amount of times I saw opponents' faces drop when I turned around the Negate as the last card in my hand, and they thought they were playing their last big special to win the hand, I could tell you I saw a lot of souls crack throughout my days of OverPower. That is, having a Negate as your final card and them playing their draw 3 or big 11 or, tuck or whatever the scenario may be, and just seeing their heart crack as they just truly think there's no way the last card in your hand could be a Negate. And just the amount of times I've turned it around, or, dare I say, had the fun Maverick moment where I just threw it up at the table and let it hit the center and, watch their heart crack in sheer despair. So the Negate truly is just that fantastic of a card at the end of the day. And there's only a few characters that actually have it. So this is why a lot of people complained for a long time in OverPower, because OverPower got a little bit sort of stagnant in the area of Negates, because people felt like they always had to play with at least one character that had one, but they were very sparse on who they gave them to and, the types of abilities that these characters had. So I'm actually going to run through every single one of them in this podcast, and hopefully it sparks you to maybe work on a deck around one of these Negators, as I recommend maybe not to have the Negator as your centerpiece of your deck, but always have it in the thought of how I break it down in terms of statistics and sort of how the grid will work within your team and your dynamic. So first and foremost, we're going to start off with the big boy himself. I'm not going to rank the Negators. Every Negator has a purpose and a reason and a thought. But this gentleman right here, dare I say, Kelsey Grammer here, the Beast, is probably one of the top tier of Negators to work around. This happens for many reasons, actually. And I'm going to kind of go through it right now. The actual Beast character itself, in the original set, is a 1/5/6. So 1 energy, 5 fighting, 6 strength. Now, this works out to 16 points, which in early OverPower was, a decent grid. It wasn't truly that crazy to have 6 character, as there was the odd time you might even play a basic universe card in your deck if you were starting out or so on. But 6 has generally lived for a bit, and obviously we all know when IQ came around, the big thing was that Beast got a big upgrade. He got to keep the 6, but he also got a 7 intellect, which is what he truly deserved. Beast being I believe one of the smarter characters in comics. So well deserved in that respect. So the actual Beast character in IQ got a 2, 5, 6, 7. So 2 energy, 5 fighting, 6 strength, and of course 7 intellect. Now intellect, of course, being a new stat at the time, was really exciting, because it created, well, not only a 4th stat, but it created a sort of revamp for these characters that maybe had sort of something that didn't work within the energy, fighting, strength grid alignment. So this Beast grid was actually really nice. The only thing, of course, being that it total 20 points. So, 1 point over the 19-point average of your character. So you had to sort of make up for that somewhere along the lines. But anybody sort of understanding intellect, especially even in the early IQ set, it was pretty easy to fit in some characters, especially with like early Mr. Fantastic in the set and so on, to sort of even out maybe like a beast point disadvantage. Now, Beast also has a couple of, well, this is where they always talk about clones and variants, okay? So Beast has one of each. He has a clone and he has a variant. What is the difference? So the difference being that a clone can not be on the same team as Beast. It is technically the same character. You can always just think of it as they are the same character either in a different spot in their timeline of life, or they're just a different character as in something has happened to them and they're in that exact sort of same timeline, or maybe they're in another timeline, but it's that character. So the original Beast in your mind. So like, for instance, Beast the Brute was a character, I believe he came out, I'm going to say, I'm going to say an X-Men, which is the last set. It may have been in Classic, though. Those two sort of meld together. They actually, were released very close to each other, so it always kind of gets me. So Beast the Brute is a clone of Beast. So you couldn't actually play Beast the Brute and Beast on the same team. Now, there's an actual pretty simple way, definer on the card to sort of understand this rule as you go on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because this is about Negators. But if you notice the Beast the Brute card, it actually says Beast and then ... the Brute. So there's no text saying like he can play Beast cards or anything along those lines, because it's literally in his name, Beast ... the Brute. It's just a different version of Beast, if that can sort of make sense in your mind. So this Beast the Brute character is a 3/6/7/1. Now, this was a huge change to the Beast world, because not only did it give you access to a 7 strength Beast, but it also still gave you an additional fighting teamwork. So, for 17 points, you were now gaining 3 teamworks, plus, of course, all of Beast specials, which we'll, generally kind of go through quickly in a moment. So this kind of gave a lot of access to the more higher priced, big, spanking strength characters later in the game. So, of course, giving a nice resurgence to strength, anchored around the character Beast the Brute, I believe. Now, my favorite Beast, it came out, my timing again, I believe it may have actually came out before IQ, but it was around the IQ timing, and it came out in a promo set. In comics called Assault on Onslaught. And in the comics, you could get these characters or their specials. And I believe it also came out in Assault on Onslaught card set, and it was like chase cards as well, and you could kind of get them one every X amount of packs. But they released 4 characters. And the 4 characters were, of course, Onslaught, Holocaust, Post. And they released Dark Beast. And what was really unique is not only was Dark Beast different, it was a 1/6/5/7 character. So 1 energy, 6 fighting, 5 strength, 7 intellect character. So very similar to Beast, but they made him 19. Which was, as we all know when we're doing overpower math, or anybody like me when you're crunching numbers in your head, that 1 point is huge when it comes to overpower, especially now with these more expensive home bases and different scenarios like that with larger characters. So it was so unique because first and foremost, it was very hard to get these characters. Like, they were actually chase cards that a lot of people were randomly, searching very hard for and achieving to get them. And they were hot in the early trade market of Overpower. I remember that. I remember just seeing the stunningness, the visuals of these four characters, and then of course all of their specials having that so unique, that unique, almost sort of, I'm going to call it like cement looking border to the specials. Really quite fun and unique set on its own. I've actually seen a beautiful version of the uncut sheet of that set, and it really is quite striking because of not only the characters but the specials and their border. So the big daddy of the Negators, Beast himself. So the reason I say this is because obviously you have four versions of Beast to choose from right away. Not only do you have a 16-point Beast in terms of the first version, so 156. So you have a 6 strength character that acts as 12 points. You add the 4, so it becomes 16-point character towards a team. Now, obviously, that's a great fit with any sort of team in terms of like a Beyonder team or something if you're just trying to get Beast specials in there. Or even, if you're trying to fit a bigger, higher ranked character as well. It's nice to sort of have those extra points, dare I say, even with the battle site. But of course, if you're going to get 16 points, it's very easy to spend one more point, and then of course you get Beast the Brute. So Beast the Brute having the ability to be a 17-point character, but still have access to a 7 power card plus a 6 offsuit teamwork is just a dream made in heaven. Now, this character obviously being used the most now because it works even better with the specials. So Beast has two really, I would say, two of the best 1 per decks you can have in the game. A large attack and a defensive special. Now, I will say a team-wide defensive special, and that's not even including the Negate I'm going to talk about. So he has a 9 fighting attack. It's very famous. It's called the drop kick. Everybody loves playing it because, it's very animated visual as well, and it feels like you're actually drop kicking your opponent's face when you do it. The second one, of course, being Stars and Garters as well. Now, this is probably a very special card because it's one of the few examples where you get to put the card on the table and it lasts the length of the game, and you decide what attack goes towards it, not your opponent. So a very, very, very powerful card out there in terms of Negate characters. So right away, just these 2 cards alone are worth a character to potentially even be on your team. But having them on a Negate character, let alone as well as on a good character, is just a match made in heaven. So that's what really truly makes Beast, the Negator to, I would say, think in the top of your list or in the general top of your list. Of course, the large attack, the team defense 1 per deck, and then of course, generally I would say for most decks you're going to run 3 Negates. I have seen people run anywhere from 2 Negates to, I don't think I've ever really seen too many people run 5 Negates, but there is potential for that in the current particular metagame of Overpower. So Beast obviously being one of those Negators that just truly fits a lot of the different grid lines. So he obviously is just a great one to think of. Now, he also offers you a very unique potential as well, because should you find a way or want to do it, you actually could put Beast and Dark Beast on the same team, potentially run a kill event or a switch event, and have no harm to yourself, whereas your opponent could potentially be devastated, and you, of course, have a backup to your Negate character, which, of course, I mentioned is so pivotal in the game of OverPower. So, great thought there as well in the Beast world. The next one I'm going to sort of move on to here is, and I kind of group them together because they're a unique duo, and they came out at a different time, but in the comic books they're connected. And I'm going to talk about them at the same time because I think they're very similar to each other in how they play and different card types they have. And that's Mojo and X-Babies. So these two are on the general cheaper side of Negators. X-Babies being a 15-point stat character at 5541, and Mojo being at a 6316. So, 15 and 16 points respectively. So at this point, I'm going to jump into the sort of Mojo operations, and you'll see why when I talk about these two together and how the reasons and connections I have between the two of them. So with Mojo, you have 2/6 stats, which is really actually quite nice because it allows you not only to pair him both with either an intellect team or an energy team. Now, in this situation, because of his special cards, I find it generally a good idea to sort of pair him up with an energy style deck. Now, obviously, you do run into a lot of, current meta hate in terms of events and things along those lines. But when you do that, you all of a sudden create this unique scenario where Mojo's specials now act all three individually as a spectrum KO. So what I mean by that is, Mojo, if you turn him into energy as your main stat on your team, he has the special of the 5 fighting, which allows him to combine with any power card. In the current rulings, it is the power card that he is allowed to play, and for a nice combine. So I mean, you can get it up to an 11 in that respect, and of course if you combine it with the intellect, with the multi-power 5, you can of course get that up to an 11, but then it being a double suited card as well. So with that really nice card, you then also have his bodyguard, which is a 5 strength, and then you may be used to attack or defend. And then you have his 6 intellect, which is like a 6 intellect. If successful, opponent is also -4 to venture. This does have a unique style of play because you can often take this card and on a sly, if you're keeping it near the end and you see your opponent has a defensive card placed like 1 to 9 or 1 to 6 or potentially even a negate placed, you actually can throw it at the battle site, and oftentimes it can get through. Now you're like, why would you throw it at the battle site? Because even though the 6 will not actually count to venture total, the fact that it was successful, the -4 will, and oftentimes, sometimes -4 will win you around a venture. So those 6 -4s are not only an amazing card because if it hits anybody on the actual team, it's a 10 towards venture, but it does have that sort of like backdoor, secret, sly way to play on battle sites as well. So always keep that in mind when you do have those characters that have those. And of course, Mojo does have one. Now, it's in the intellect stat. So with that being said, that's why I said if you can kind of create Mojo around an energy-based team, you then create it where his specials create sort of a really nice spectrum KO. Now, obviously, being a character at that low of points, if you go either way, energy or intellect, he's just a great all-around fit. He luckily has that inherent ability as well, which is +1 to all multi-power cards when used to attack. So very sort of sly way that you can create scenarios where you can lure things over top of 1 to 6s or possibly even 1 to 9s in different respects. Maybe you're using, a training card or something along those lines to get it over top of that. So very, very sly character, Mojo. I have actually used him in a tournament. I found him to decent success. But as you'll see, he's very similar in effect to the X Babies because, as Mojo has the 6-4, I would say as his premier attack card, and of course the Negate being his premier defensive card, he truly does lack a lot in the 1 per deck department. Of course, that 5 fighting I did mention being 1 per deck as well. Sort of a B or C tier 1 per deck in my mind. So then, of course, we get to X Babies themselves. Now, this was a dynamic release in Monumental. I remember these little kids on this card, especially with little Wolverine there and little Longshot, is just one of the more fun things I think OverPower ever did, putting this character in the game. So, the X Babies character, of course, being the only 5 stat character that OverPower has, or I guess ever has, and of course being the only 15-point character. Now, there are other characters that can total 14 or 15 points when you're using like a 3-stat character and bringing them into the IQ environment based off, the +4 point total that you do for the first character you sort of transition over. But as a 4-stat character, it's actually the only character that holds a 15-point stat range. Now, this just truly means that instantly pays for any 23-point character you want to put on your team, let alone, putting those points towards either like a home base or 2 large characters. You could imagine how far a 15-point character can stretch. That's 4 points off the 19-point average. There's a lot of points to sort of stretch towards your team. Now, a lot of people go, well, they only have a 5 as their main stat. Now, of course, they have 2 5s. They have 5 energy and 5 fighting, which is great to sort of like try to fit them into a range. Now, there is also a home base now that also gives them a little boost to their defense. Spartan Training Ground, which would, of course, take advantage of both the 5 stats that they have. And that would, of course, allow them access to +4 on any of their power cards once per battle. Now, obviously, right there alone is just a great advantage to sort of like put that combo together. Now, X Babies also, because I think they had this stat range, they in a later set gave them a 7 any power, which I believe is called Little Phoenix. It's a 7 any power, may be used to attack or defend. So it truly did give them a 7 stat, but through a power card. And it's not a 1 per deck, so you could potentially actually have several of those in your deck where they could just be sort of X Babies versions of attacking or blocking. So right away you already see that's a good non-1 per deck card for the X Babies. Now, they also received the 6-4. Now, that's where I sort of tie them in with the whole idea of X Babies and Mojo. And then, in my mind, comic book wise, they're just, connected as well. So they each have this 6-4. However, in the X Babies world, it's actually in strength. It's called Little Colossus. Now, this is a huge card because it's generally a huge offsuit from the team that you're putting the X Babies with, because you're usually pairing them up with either the energy or the fighting stat. So it's really nice to sort of have this big offsuit hit from them as well. Now, they do have a Straight Avoid as well, and of course, Mojo does have a Straight Avoid in that respect as well. Now, the good thing about something like the X Babies is, if you're trying to pair them up with like Beyonder, all of a sudden you're actually gaining a point towards an extra character that you can actually put on the team, because in a Beyonder build you generally have a 16-point average around all your characters that are around Beyonder. So having a 15-point character obviously can create this sort of scenario where you can gain other points. Now, the one thing that I think starts to set the X-Babies apart a little bit, and this was a very underused card, and it's a card that I think is going to generally start to see a lot more play as we move forward in the game. And it didn't get a lot of play because the meta of Overpower was in the any hero range for a long time, but now with the build of battle sites coming in, the use of Little Rogue. Now, this card is a 1 per deck by the X-Babies, and it essentially says that you can't use the opponent may not use any activator cards for either attack or defense. Now, it does allow them to do weird little tricky things still, like, tucking Venture, or going and getting cards from your deck through DSs and something along those lines. But it really does limit quite a lot of what most builds to a battle site are. So, especially with battle sites now being what I would say probably 70 to 80% of most tournament fields, I would actually say Little Rogue all of a sudden has become a really big player card to have. And especially with potentially even pairing the X-Babies up on a deck now, not only, like I said, with the Spartan Training Ground home base, but you can also get the Odin's Vault home base, which could potentially even just get them to a 7 stat by the second round of a game. So, X-Babies aren't what they as weak as people truly think they are, especially, I didn't even mention their inherent ability, which allows power cards to essentially be null and nothing on their permanent record or current battle. And what I mean by that is just they don't actually count towards cumulative or spectrum KO. So you still have to watch out for the dead is dead aspect rule with power cards, but essentially any power card that hits the X-Babies is just a blank number. So a really, really pivotal character. X-Babies has a lot of history, especially going back to the Vertigo days of Overpower, where you could, put a Vertigo in play and just shift all your hits that you wanted to the X-Babies. And then, back in those days, it was to either Onslaught kill the X-Babies or to Holocaust tuck on the X-Babies, which still to this day is probably a, medium combo as well. So as you can see, X-Babies, Mojo, both great characters. The one really unique thing about Mojo, now of course I told you he's a 16-point character. The one thing that's really unique about Mojo is a lot of people actually forget that his older rendition, the one that came out in Power Surge, is actually a 6 fighting character, and his grid total actually comes up to 17, so he's 13 on his grid, and I believe he's a 265. Yeah, 265, and obviously with the 4 additional points he becomes 17. So it's a sort of hidden gem if you ever sort of are stuck for a fighting and Negator and you're like, I could get away with a 6, and you're like, I have 17 points and I'm just not a fan of Beast the Brute, or Beast, Beast the Brute, because maybe you want to use a battle site that has Beast on it. You could always put Mojo in there. He's sort of that sort of hidden gem, 6 fighting, and he actually has 5 strength on that character as well. So a little hidden gem, sort of secret of the Mojo land of Negates, the 6 fighting version of him. So as we continue on, as you can see, we've already spoken about, I would say, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Negators. There's not many left. As a matter of fact, there's very few left. So let's get through these last couple. The next one I'm going to speak about is quite unique. This one came out, and I always wanted to say that I think they should have got more gumption than they got. But I think being a 6 stat character, that was hard in the overpower world to sort of defend them too much. And of course now, with battle sites that have the ability sort of juice lower stat characters up, you do have a little bit more stamina with them. But I think this character sort of got lost in the shuffle and lost in the mix, and actually has a decent few amount of specials, and has probably one of the few unique things and abilities that I don't think any of the other negators have. Now, I'm referencing Serpent Society. I believe they're actually going to be big in a movie coming up very shortly in the MCU. So, fun character. I've always really liked them. I like the visual of their character card, and I always thought that they had decent specials to sort of complement the negate aspect of them as well. So they are an 18-point character, and their main feature is that they have 2 6s, one in fighting and one in strength. Now, the unique thing about them is, as much as they're a main 6 stat character, they not only have the negate, the AO, but they have teammate may avoid 1 attack. Now, this of course coded AD, a very, very strong card, especially when it comes to a negator, cheaper style negator. You can generally fit them with fighting or strength style team. And they also bring a little bit of sort of, dare I say, team defense, not for themselves, but team defense to the board as well. So really unique style there. The only character that actually has sort of like a team defense other than, you know, the big boy beast in sort of that general effect as well. Really nice character. I want to say they also have a 2/8, so that's a 2. If it hits, it becomes an 8 on the current battle. So really nice venture card in that respect. You have the 7 strength. If it is successful, target character may not attack. So they have sort of these sort of little punches as well. I believe they also have a 2 energy attack as well you could make after the opponent concedes. They have these little sort of like punchier style attacks, still a 2/8 and a 7 being decent in the venture range. But the thing that's really unique about them is not only do they have the dual 6 grid, but they have that teammate avoid. And what happens by that is your opponent, of course, in most tournaments will have general knowledge of most of the card pool. And when you see Serpent Society, there's this unique ability that people just go after them. Now, this is good and bad all at the same time because, you generally don't want your negator to die on your team early on, because you sort of need those cards mid to late game to sort of make the pivotal big moments either happen or go away. So you don't really want your negator to be attacked, but it creates a scenario where a lot of people, I would say a lot of majority style people, will go for Serpent Society because they don't want to have to deal with the teammate avoids. Now, this is really nice because it kind of keeps your other characters who may be sort of bigger stat, bigger hitter characters alive. I find this sort of like a good trait, and like I said, can also generally be a bad trait too. But you can, of course, always cater your own deck towards this. So Serpent Society being a very unique character, I think very underrated. Especially in a world where there's other characters that have teammate avoid or, 1 to 9 teammate style cards that you could even create a sort of half shell game scenario off, where it's like you can attack Serpent Society, but this character will also have teammate avoids and kind of have that style of deck as well. Really, really neat little strategy in that respect. So Serpent Society being a decent character, again, 18 points to fit in a team. And I believe they do have an inherent ability. It revolves around tactic cards. Look that one up. I'm sure it's a doozy. Tactic cards just never sort of, hit the right spot until sort of, I would say, recent. But we will talk about that on another podcast. So to continue down the negator lane, we have three left. I'm going to sort of talk about one and then finally talk about the other two. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Reavers. So in this particular one, the Reavers was a character that came out, and I almost want to call them like a big baddie. Like they have a 5.76 as their stat range, and they total 21 points. Really, really, really unique character when they came out. Now, some might say underpowered because, of course, people always look for that general large attack, a la like Beast at 9. But a character that just really brought a lot of different cards to the table, and a character that even to this new age of overpower, through the end of the Renaissance here, has really even brought a different sort of angle and staple that I think a lot of people can abuse in many different ways, sort of two different ways actually with home bases. So the Reavers are unique because not only are they this big baddie character that I just mentioned, and the only 7 fighting negator that you can have on a team. So it's the only one that exists in the game of Overpower. If you want a 7 fighting negator on your team, it's probably one of the greatest travesties to the fighting stat that occurred, other than, it generally being underpowered and, just generally being underlooked at throughout the whole range of Overpower. Um, I will tell you one day that I was very proud that probably my biggest first splash in Overpower was with a fighting deck. But again, you will hear that through one of the history podcasts that you'll get to listen to. So the Reavers being very, very amazing because they obviously provide you the ability to sort of play a fighting deck and have a 7 fighting negator. Now, they have very unique specials as well, which makes sort of stand out above different characters. And it does range a lot in their 1 per deck. So one of their 1 per decks is a multi-2, and it can only be defended by a special. Now, of course, remember, when it says only can be defended by a special, that does not include an activator. So if that 2 comes across the table, they cannot use an activator to defend that. Even though it's a special underneath the battle site, it is an activator that essentially is blocking, so you cannot use it. So very powerful in that respect, as people keep activators as their defense in their hands a lot. The next thing they have is an avoid one, Reavers may not be attacked for a remainder of battle. Now I say that specifically, of course, because that style of may not be attacked for remainder of battle can actually be played offensively. It doesn't have to be activated by defending an attack. But of course you can still defend an attack with it as well. Now that's what's essentially known as the lockout card in the game, and the fact that they have one of those is just amazing, because if you're trying a lockout strategy, it's also it is the only negator that has a lockout ability to them in that respect. So then the other 1 per deck they have, and this one sort of like plays really, really well off of the Asclepion home base that is out right now, and it's teammate of the Reavers removes all cards and removes all hits from their permanent record. Now, this is obviously great because when you're playing it with Asclepion, not only do you get to remove the hits from their permanent record, you also get to activate Asclepion, draw a card, and attack as well. So really nice to have that as an additional ability through a negator. Now, of course, with that being said, they have an additional one like that as well called Lady Death Strike. And this one allows you to sort of look at through your opponent's deck and choose a card and remove it from the game. Now, of course, if you're playing the new home base 221 Baker Street, you actually get to look through the opponent's deck and remove 2 cards from the game. So you can imagine how more powerful that would become with the accentuation of that home base. Now, on top of all of that, they also have a 7 energy. Now, as I mentioned, there are 5, 7, 6 as their main stats. So energy not being one of their main stats, it is a nice offsuit, really large AR style attack. So as you can see, a lot coming through the Reavers, but at an expensive 21 point cost. So you're going to have to figure out points somewhere else. And generally fighting characters aren't on the cheaper style end. So you have to really sort of figure it out how you're doing it if you're including Reavers on your team. Now, there is a little bit of a Reavers cheat code out there as well, whereas you could use Donald Pierce. Now, Donald Pierce is one of those characters that I mentioned that he acts as the Reaver. So now his cards at the bottom it says may play Reaver specials. So now this means you could actually play Donald Pierce and the Reavers on the same team because they're technically not the same person, even though they really are. Weird overpower rules. But the great thing about Donald Pierce is he's actually 6 strength, 7 intellect. So you actually can, get the Reaver special card set, but through intellect as well, or dare I say even strength, depending how you want to go. Now, obviously, me saying that he's 6 strength, 7 intellect, that's just, the main stats of that character. But his total grid total is actually only 19 points. So you can kind of cheat code and get the Reaver special card set through 19 points as well in that respect. And of course, intellect having some cheaper characters, 19 points is a nice fit there as well. So, as you can see, we're getting down. There's not too many, but we've talked about quite a few. So, I think there's a lot of options that you can sort of move and shake around in terms of negate style characters. Now, the last, I said 2, but I guess the last 3 that occur. One that I think kind of got a little back end of the stick as well through a character, but fun one to play, and I think has his own angle as well, and that's the Mole Man. You gotta pay the mole toll. Everybody knows that. Mole Man's unique because he is one of the few characters that has, again, different styles of specials that I think you can cater to. Now, the tough thing about Mole Man is his main stat is a 6 intellect. He doesn't have really much going on in the stat world other than that, and he's a 16-point character though, so he does have a lot of leeway in terms of fitting him with more expensive style teams. Now, the great thing about the Mole Man is not only does he have these negates, but he also has a special called JZ, and it's in the energy grid, so it's a 5 energy. May not be attacked by, or sorry, may not be blocked by a special. Now, of course, this being very good in the game of OverPower, because a lot of times, teams are generally working around team defensive style decks. So these 5s, especially played later in rounds, can often have times where they sort of like pierce or penetrate characters that, they thought would be defended by their defensive special. So really nice sort of complementary card to have with the negate as well. Now he does also bring a little bit more to the table. He does also have a 1 per deck where only Mole Man and that character may attack or defend for the rest of the battle. Sort of locks the 2 characters in a mono attack. Now, of course, Mole Man being a 6 character, I don't know how much you want him monoing against other people, but there may be a moment where the Mole Man's ready to make the person pay the toll. So, but of course you can even just, pair that up with the simple strategy of, the Mole Man and the target character may not, or are the only ones who can attack or defend, and then play something along the lines of like a Gambit Charm, or may not be attacked for a remainder of battle through a battle site, and locking the Mole Man off where you can then still attack their character. Now, that's about all that Mole Man brings. People are gonna get angry right now that I'm saying that. He does have another one per deck that's a multi-one. If you throw it at the battle site, it's a 11 any power, but it doesn't count towards venture total. And then he also has a card where if you play it, all attacks have to go to Mole Man until he can't be attacked anymore. Of course, in this scenario, though, you'd say that's pretty good. And he gets from his inherent, he also gets +2 to defensive cards. And then at the end of the day, the problem with that is when you block him off or you create a scenario where he can't be attacked anymore, uh, you know, your opponent is allowed to attack a different character. So it doesn't really gain you much other than sort of like creating a scenario where you want Mole Man dead and you can kind of push all the attacks towards him. Or maybe you could create a scenario where you use that and you're playing Onslaught Citadel and you use the Holocaust tuck all the hits on Mole Man. There is always potential, like I say, to these characters, and I am not knocking any of them. I think every single one of these negators have a reason to be in a deck, and I could see it. And if you sold me, I would easily be sold on any of these negators being in a deck. Of course, that's pretty much what Mole Man brings to the table. He's kind of like left off to the side a lot of the times because other than truly his Jay-Z special piercing 5, he doesn't really bring too much more. But I look forward to seeing someone prove me wrong and bring a Mole Man winner to the table. So we have the final two. Another one is one of the promos that I had aforementioned earlier in the podcast, like the Dark Beast that came out in that 4 set. Well, another one that came out in that set was Holocaust. Oh, what a beautiful character this is. 7262. 17 points, as I mentioned, just like Beast before the Brute. So easy to fit with higher point characters. An offsuit teamwork. He provides you with a negate, which is amazing. And then, of course, not only that, does he provide you with a multi-8 one per deck. So now we're getting into the scenario of like a high tier negator here again. Now, past that, sadly, a lot of his cards are best used in situational moments. He does have a 5, which is an energy. If it is successful, it removes a hit from his permanent record. Now, this could be sort of paired up with an Asclepion sort of conceptual idea, but it's generally not really put in many decks with him. Now, I did recently play a deck with him where I did use the 4 intellect that he has, which is an AR called Horrifying Image. Now, it's really nice because it's just an offsuit attack for him in general, and I was using a lot of speed in the deck with a lot of allies, so that 4 sort of came at a faster rate than it would generally come in a Holocaust style deck. So it was really nice to have that sort of offsuit style attack. But past that, he's just not providing very much other than situational style cards and including his tuck, which is great, but it's only on cards that are attacked on him. So you really have to find the moment to have that situation to have that occur. So you often won't play that in your sort of main deck. That's more of a battle site idea. But of course, 3 negates the 8, and then potentially playing his 4 or his 5 or, one of his other cards, whether it be the adventure total or minus venture total. There is always thoughts for Holocaust, and his point total and the ability to throw the offsuit teamwork is just, amazing in my conceptual idea. And with that big attack, you almost can't get any better. But you can actually get better. And her name is Scarlet Witch. I tried to bookend this with Beast and Scarlet Witch because, there's the king and there's the queen. And, there's the big daddy and there's the big mama. And this is the big mama. This is the queen, Negator, right here. This is probably one of the more overpowered characters in the game of Overpower for the point total that you receive everything that you receive for the character. Um, has fallen a little bit out of vogue lately in the tournament scene, shockingly, but I think it's just because energy has maybe fallen a little bit on the meta side away. Um, but Scarlet Witch, fantastic character. The inherent ability she has, which is already amazing, is when she's KO'd, she's -5 to venture total, or opponent is -5 to venture total. So that right there is a deterrent for people to even attack her. She's 17 point total and has a 7 energy stat, and her next big stat would be 5 intellect. Now, you say, why is she overpowered, Marcel? And the truth is, not only does she have what I just mentioned with Holocaust, with the negates and a multi-8, a multi-8, one per deck, but she also has a card that says opponent must discard one placed card. It's coded as an AI. Now, it's different than normal AIs. Now, normal AIs, say target hero, or later version AI, say target hero, must discard one placed card. Now, Scarlet Witches and a few other characters say opponent must discard one placed card. Now, because of this differential in wording, Overpower allowed it that that card actually has to be negated, or you actually have to discard the card I'm telling you to do. Now, not only that, it allows you to actually target not only the reserve character cards, it allows you to target home base cards as well, and it allows you to target any frontline character cards as well. So you can imagine this, the added ability of all of that. Now, on top of that, she also has an offsuit 6 AR, which is a 6 strength, level 6 strength attack. So you can just imagine, this negate character has this plethora of cards that they can use. Of course, also having a personal numerical avoid as well. Holocaust, of course, having a personal avoid. So it seems like negators often will get their own personal sort of defense. Mole Man, of course, getting, the back end of that stick. Once again. And of course, Serpent Society giving their own personal defense to someone else. So really unique, because that's it. That's your negate world. Those are your real negators in the game of Overpower. Those are the characters that you get to choose from. Everybody I mentioned there, you have to choose one of them for a relatively competitive deck in the game of Overpower. Now, most people are upset about that. I'm not. I think I just told you a wide range of characters that you get to choose from, and I think they all have different abilities. You can really create a lot of fun, unique, different strategy style decks with every single one of these style characters in every suit. Some tougher than others, but there is a way for every single grid to be represented here. Now, there is sort of what I would call pseudo negates in the game, and it's what I'm going to sort of finish this podcast on. And I would say there's 2 subcategories to this. The first one is vamp negates, is the subcategory I'll call it. So they're vampire style negates. These negates are unique because it's the 2 vampire characters that have them. So Morbius and Dracula. Now they're a little bit different in both respects. Morbius says may negate any non-numerical attack. Now, of course, remember, it does say attack, so this still has to be like a card that crosses the board and attacks either you or your characters. Of course, that aforementioned Scarlet Witch opponent discard could be negated by the Morbius negate. So, right there you can already see what I'm trying to reference in terms of like the types of cards it can negate. Now, it can obviously not, as I just mentioned, be a numerical attack. So if somebody throws like a 7 fighting special card at you, you cannot use that card to defend it. Now, You can obviously use it for things like draw threes, or if they lock out their things, you can use it to negate that. And there's a lot of like reasons to have this type of negate in your deck. There's a lot of different specials that are not numerical style attack specials in most people's decks. So there is definitely a world for this out there. Now, of course, his can just be played exactly like a negate, defensively, offensively, other than the numerical restriction. Dracula's, on the other hand, has some advantage, some disadvantage. So Dracula's is very similar, so it cannot be used for numerical attacks. However, it is the style upon which you play the negate and you actually play it into the field of battle. Or as the new way they're referencing it, the astral plane. So you play this negate out in front, and what happens is you actually get to choose when they eventually play one of these cards, a non-numerical special, to discard that card to negate that special. Now the thing that's unique about that is what I just mentioned, is you put it in the field of play. Now, by putting it in the actual field of play, you can actually stack these or play majority of these over and over and over. Now, what's also really unique about this is that Dracula himself is an 8-stat character. So having a sub negate with an 8 character is also a very, very unique and positive attribute that really truly no other character has. But of course, it again being a non-numerical negate. But the stackability idea behind it, and the fact that he's an 8-stat character. Now, of course, he's 22 points, 6 strength, 8 intellect. So a little tough to fit in a lot of decks in that respect. But, just a thought that there is this sort of like vamp negate subsection. And, those negates really will stop a lot of the game-changing types of cards that I'm referencing that you often will actually need a negate for. So I will say don't sleep on these characters. Think about them. Even old Morbius potentially giving you a 7 strength at 15 points. Really, really great cheap character there with a lot to give in that character as well. I'm not going to really talk about those two characters too much, but I did want you to understand that there is this sort of like vamp negate subsection to this area as well, into the negate world. Now, on the final subsection of negates, I will sort of like talk about two. One would be brand new in the Masters of Evil set, Juggernaut. Again, another 8-stat character. Got a defensive style special block, which I thought was really neat as well. And of course, really this one though, saying Juggernaut or teammate may avoid any non-numerical attack. So it's almost in the vamp style world as well, but it falls more as an avoid as opposed to a negate type of reference. Now, obviously, negate sort of like ending anything, whereas an avoid would just avoid the attack. Of course, if there was any sort of additional text or anything, there could still be potential where the Juggernaut one would not end the complete card in the special that's being played against you. But again, another nice sort of like special style block out there for Juggernaut as well. As I say that one, I do obviously always want to reference that Colossus himself does have a special for, may avoid teammate, may avoid a special, and you draw one card as well. So there's another additional sort of special style block, again, sub-negate category. That occurs as well in OverPower. Now there is one other character that exists that has this sort of, I guess you could call it a special, defensive special sort of attribute, and it's the Inhumans. This character has an 8 as their main stat, and which is an energy grid, and I believe they have a 5 strength as well. They cost 21 points in the deck build, so a little bit on the expensive side, but they do have 2 large attacks. So they have a 9 intellect as well as one of those multi-8s I mentioned. Now theirs is not truly a negate, but of course it does provide almost the opposite effect in terms of the negates I was just talking about, the vamp negates, but a lot more sort of like utilization and sort of like situational sort of scenarios to the special. Now, what it does is it actually says Inhumans or teammate may avoid one attack made with a special card, or may remove one special card hit. And of course, either from current or permanent, it doesn't matter. Now, this one, of course, having the ability that, of course, it can avoid any of these like bigger numerical style attacks, but it still can avoid those non-numerical attacks as well. But this one only allowing you to sort of like block an attack version, as opposed to sort of like a draw 3 or being able to sort of manipulate anything on their side of the board. So as you can see, this is sort of a different style of special. Now, the unique thing about this special is it does still hold the sort of negate attribute that if you do take the special card hit, you can always use this Royal Family, which is the name of the Inhumans card, to remove that special card hit after it's been taken. So whether it be off current or permanent, really nice sort of thought. Now, really nice trick out there that does occur is when someone attacks you with like target character may not attack for remainder of battle on the Inhumans, you can often take that. They may play certain cards of their hand or, different ways, and then play the Inhumans Royal Family to remove it later, and then open up the access of attacking through them later. So, really sort of dynamic, sort of defensive special approach that the Inhumans sort of bring to the game. Now, of course, 21 points a little bit on the expensive side, but a lot of people don't remember that they actually have a cheaper counterpart, and her name is Crystal. Now, she actually was released in the Chrome Hero set. I believe it was 8 characters that were released, and I'll discuss them in another podcast. But one of the main ones that was released was Crystal, and she has a 7 energy, but she's only 17 points, so similar to the Scarlet Witch in terms of special defense, and basically brings to the table again a really nice plethora of cards, because for 17 points and a 7 energy stat, she not only brings you this this special defense, but again she brings you those big Inhumans cards like the 9 intellect and the 8 multi. And of course, Medusa, target character may not attack, and of course a 4 strength. If successful, discard all place cards. So, for 17 points, Crystal is a very underutilized and very underthought about character out there in OverPower, and quite a competitive character if I say so myself. And obviously, anytime you can, flaunt a beautiful chromium character on your front line, I don't think you're ever in a bad place in my books. That's straight out of the GOAT's book of straight out of the GOAT's playbook. So this I hope gave you a real sense of the negators and the special styles of defense that occur in the game of OverPower. I would generally say, somebody I mentioned in this podcast should probably be on your deck when you're approaching competitive OverPower play. There's often just too many times where your opponent has big boy cards that just need to be dealt with, and the next thing you know, you just have no way to deal with them, and you either lose all your cards placed to a character, they get to draw more additional cards, or they lock you down or make you discard cards from your hand. Like, there was a plethora of things that could occur. So I hope this gives you a sense of understanding competitive characters in OverPower, and this sort of category of negator, and being 25% of your deck, you kind of have to choose very smart and accordingly to, to to the play style and what you're trying to achieve with your deck, because all of these negators have a little something different. And again, most of them have even other specials I didn't mention, so you should look into them, because maybe one of their offshoot non one per decks play very well for you. Again, something like Scarlet Witch, getting something like playing current battle, next battle you can't place anything with a strength icon. um, Unique weird cards that could just potentially actually, work out for you in a different situation. And of course, when I say it's always good to have a negator, there are decks out there that are playing with non-negate frontline characters. Of course, I would say in that situation, always looking for one of these negators on your battle site is always a good scenario as well. At least having access to it, so hopefully it potentially lines up with that one pivotal moment in a key game of overpower for you. When you're trying to climb that mountain and you're in the middle of a tournament, the last thing you want to see is that your opponent playing a huge one per deck special, whatever it does, and you have no way in your whole deck to even potentially have a way to stop that. So think about it in terms of that respect, but again, I'm just here to help, and this is another advanced Overpower podcast from the Overpower Mountain podcast, and I'm thankful that you joined me. This one was a bit of a long one, but I wanted to get through all the negators and special defenses. So leave a comment. Who's your favorite negator? Who do you love using all the time? Who can you not get rid of? How much do you love the X babies? And of course, subscribe, like, and thanks for joining me. I can't wait till the next one.